I think it's huge. And again, I harp on, like, who has Jalen Hurts really gone up against and beaten in terms of the quality of team, in terms of the quality of quarterback. You're talking about Matt Ryan and Teddy Bridgewater as the best quarterbacks he's ever really gone up against and led the Eagles to victory. And I think that kind of speaks to him being more of a, at least to this point, and we'll see if he takes a jump this year, a quarterback you win with, who's along for the ride, as opposed to one you're really winning because of. And he's going out and he's helping you win the game in spite of certain circumstances. So I think it's a huge year, obviously, for him. And I think there is something, I don't know, I wouldn't say it's likely by any means the Eagles are giving him a contract.
It's never taken me
Never
8 hours.
taken 8 hours?
No. Even
There
on the
he
worst
is.
days on the Atlantic City Expressway, it's never taken me 8 hours to get to Seattle. So I doubt it highly. He was going down. He's maybe going down tomorrow. We'll ask him that first. BLG, are you Ocean Drive bound today?
No, I'm not.
Now, it's that time of year, BLG, where you have these football camps, in the case of Jason's celebrity bartending, which is a little bit more fun. So I guess I'll start it there because I saw Miles Sanders with our friends over at CBS is dropping. I kind of cringed. I want to pull up the quote because I don't want to quote. I don't want to misquote Miles, but it was an all-star team type reference. Here it is. We all feel like we're on an all-star team. We feel unstoppable. Any dream team vibes there? BLG.
Well, yeah, I mean,
they get in trouble, man. They get in trouble when they say stuff like this.
Given the history of this team, yeah, those comments tend to not always work out the best, or I don't know. The comments in and of itself obviously don't make the team any worse or whatever, but no. I think it's the, you don't love to see it. I feel like, just based on the history, again, it reminds you some things that didn't go well, and don't really don't talk about it, be about it.
And by the way, it is one position where the Eagles made no moves this offseason. Nada, zip, zero, zilch. The running back position. There are changes all around this team. New guys coming in, guys whose contracts were up coming back. And I guess you could say the same about the running back position because they needed to re-sign Scott. But it's the same group that was there last year. Sanze, Juwan Howard, but he may be coming back at some point because he's always waiting for the Eagles to call. And then, boom, he drops in and he's productive. They hand him the ball and Howard gets the job done. We understand, at least I think I understand the reason why. See if you're on the same page. They're just not going to run the ball that much this year. They were the number one rushing team in the NFL last year. A lot of that having to do with Jalen Hurts taking off for running himself, but they were the number one rushing team in the NFL. They're hoping not to have to run it as much this year. Are they okay at running back? Is Miles talking about his teammates when he calls them an all-star team? But is he going to be able to do enough? Is Kenny Gainwell going to be able to do enough? Are the Eagles good at running back for you, BLG?
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest questions facing this team, is their approach, because I think we all expect them to pass more than they did last year, certainly, but I just don't know, how you're going from being, the heaviest run team in terms of the lowest passing play percentage to whatever they want to get to this year. And obviously they have better tools in the passing attack. And, I think they have enough, at running back to have a productive running game. Ideally, it's going to be, a complementary kind of piece to the offense. And it's just kind of weird to think, they'd go away from it entirely because it's what worked for them, especially late last year and where they kind of found their identity. So that's the weird part of it all, that they're kind of going to have to shift away from that because, the reality is, they can use that kind of approach maybe against some of these lesser teams, and this kind of goes to maybe having reservations about what Miles Sanders said. It's one thing to look at everything on paper and think it sounds great. It's another thing to go out and prove it. And this Eagles team, dating back to last season, has not proven at all that they can beat good teams. Like, that is not something they have proven they can do.
Yeah.
and is a big question mark this year. And now, fortunately for them, their schedule isn't really too difficult. They get the Packers. They have some games on there that the Cowboys a little bit tougher than others, but it's not like it's exactly loaded. They have one of the easiest schedules in the league. So I think they do have enough at running back talent, at running back to have a productive game. But again, going back to the comments of it all, I just think they need to really prove a lot before we can just assume they're a great team.
All right. Since we've gone down this rabbit hole, BLG, I'm going to continue with the ground game and Miles specifically, not about his comments, but because myself, I've been in sort of this weird frame with Miles when he was a rookie and he showed a lot of potential. I think a lot of fans were like, Miles is great. And I was like, he's not one of the best running backs in football. Slow your roll a little bit. And now I think everybody's kind of dismissed him, or at least a lot of people have dismissed him. And now I'm to the point where I'm like, he's starting to get a little bit underrated, I think, because he's got his issues. He's not a great pass catcher. We know he's not a great pass protector. I think he still leaves meat on the bones. He's always trying to kick things outside. But I wrote about this recently, and I said, I think there's this antiquated notion that the 1,215-yard rusher exists. It doesn't exist anymore in the NFL. There were two last year, Jonathan Taylor and Nick Chubb. That's it. And there's been like a total, forget about 1,500. I think if you go back to 3 years, it's Taylor, it's Derrick Henry, it's Dalvin Cook. That's it. So I think people expect 1,250 yards, and that kind of back doesn't exist anymore, with the exception of that rarefied air. And Miles is not in that rarefied air, never was, but he averaged 5.5 yards a carry. Now, granted, behind the best offensive line in football, but that was the top number in the entire NFL. He tied, I believe, with Taylor. And besides quarterbacks, Lamar and Jalen Hurts were about it. Do you think Miles Sanders has gone from overrated with this fan base to underrated in pretty much record time?
Yeah, I think there's a case for that. I mean, I do think there are some issues, as you mentioned. The 5.5 yards per carry is very good, but he only had one fumble last year, but there were a couple of opportunities there where some near fumbles, and some bad situations too, like backed up against their own goal line. And it was like very fortunate that a call wasn't made the other way or looked very close to coming out. So that's still troublesome and has been an issue going back to Penn State. And as you mentioned, same thing with being a pass catching running back. Like, it was really only his rookie year that he showed, chops there, and 10.2 yards per reception, 3 touchdowns. Hasn't had a receiving touchdown since then, and that's a little annoying, especially going into his contract year, and you're wondering, can this guy be a long-term piece? And those are the kind of things that I think you would need to see for him to be that. It's one thing to be a productive rusher, and then again, too, I would look at just from an anecdotal perspective, it seemed like the offense was a little bit better when and the turnaround started to happen, in part when he was injured and when he was away, which is another red flag with him, by the way. Only played in 12 games each of the past 2 seasons, where the offense seemed to do a little bit better when they stayed on schedule, as opposed to kind of the feast or famine nature that Miles Sanders can kind of have sometimes with leaving meat on the bone. So, I think there's some issues there. And again, it doesn't, the 5.5 doesn't really tell the whole story. Again, he definitely has talent, but there are some red flags that kind of hold him back from being a truly, kind of Pro Bowl great player.
BLG, let me take you over to the quarterback position. And I know I'm jettisoning ahead in doing so, but there's speculation this week that Jalen Hurts is potentially going to get a contract extension as soon as he's eligible to do it. I don't know about that. Jalen Hurts is going to have the season he's going to have. And the Eagles are going to make the playoffs. Yes, go. Circle us on your calendar. Jody Max had it right here on Birds 365. I don't think I'm going to be on Old Takes Exposed because of this. The Eagles will be making the playoffs this year. And Jalen Hurts will have the game that he has. This past year against Tampa, not so good. If he has another mediocre to underachieving day, is he a dead man walking? Because the previous quarterback here in this town had some pretty damn good regular seasons, but all we heard about, yeah, but he never wins a playoff game. He hasn't won a playoff game. He can't win a playoff game. I don't know if he could or couldn't. He just went completely in a tank his last year. But I was ready to move on from Carson Wentz, not because he couldn't win a playoff game, because he couldn't win a game in his final year under Doug Peterson. How big is the playoff game for Jalen Hurts this year?
I think it's huge. And again, I harp on, like, who has Jalen Hurts really gone up against and beaten in terms of the quality of team, in terms of the quality of quarterback. You're talking about Matt Ryan and Teddy Bridgewater as the best quarterbacks he's ever really gone up against and led the Eagles to victory. And I think that kind of speaks to him being more of a, at least to this point, and we'll see if he takes a jump this year, a quarterback you win with, who's along for the ride, as opposed to one you're really winning because of. And he's going out and he's helping you win the game in spite of certain circumstances. So I think it's a huge year, obviously, for him. And I think there is something, I don't know. I wouldn't say it's likely by any means the Eagles are giving him a contract, and that doesn't mean it won't happen. I'm just saying at this point, I don't think anyone can say it's likely. But I do think there is going to be there's pressure from his camp as soon as after this offseason.
Oh, yeah.
Well, it's the Eagles' MO to extend players early. So, like, it would be weird to just go into a lame duck quarterback season with Jalen Hurts, another one. And also, because of how the Eagles kind of flirted with other quarterbacks, even this offseason with Russell Wilson and Deshaun Watson, like, I would expect Jalen Hurts' camp to kind of really even put more pressure on the team to be like, hey, we want this commitment, especially because, you guys have this extra first-round pick from the Saints, and they're, the second-round pick the year out from that. And, are probably going to be well aware that the Eagles could potentially be involved. So I feel like they're going to want to see some commitment. And again, the Eagles' MO is to extend players early. So I do think there's going to be some kind of discussion after the season or pressure. And, I feel like Jalen Hurts currently, I don't think it's likely that he is going to get that contract. But, he could easily prove me wrong if he has a great season.
Yeah, we've been talking about it. I've been talking about it with Jody for months about Jalen Hurts' potential extension after this season. Probably talked about it with you on this show, BLG. You think about it, 28. What happened last year with the 2018 draft class? Jordan Mailata, Josh Sweat, Avonte Maddox, Dallas Goedert. They identify players they want that they think are foundational pieces, extend them early. This year, they went outside the organization, but they did the same thing with A.J. Brown, the 2019 class. They gave him an extension. 2020 class, Jalen Hurts. Next year, extension if they think he's a foundational piece. Now, the problem with the quarterback position is $35 million, maybe it starts at, for a Pro Bowl alternate level player. And that's what Jalen was last season. Is that good enough for $40 million? This is the question I've been asking for months. I'm glad other people are starting to pick up on it. I don't know how you pay that kind of money for that kind of production. So we need a significant jump. Is he capable of a significant jump? Or did the Eagles go the other way, Brandon, and say, well, that's just the cost of doing business, and a pretty good quarterback makes $35 million now, so we have to pay that. Where do you think the Eagles will land on that sort of spectrum?
I mean, I just think you look back at the comments, like Jeffrey Lurie saying like he's obsessed with having an elite passing offense, and you look at what the Eagles were last year, and if they don't make big strides towards being an elite passing offense or something approaching that, resembling that, then I just don't see how they would be willing to really settle. Settle and fine. I don't think Jeffrey Lurie is of the mindset we can kind of just settle at the quarterback position. I don't think that's how he thinks about it, and how he should. To be fair, it's how he shouldn't think like that about it. I think they could do better potentially, and they should be striving for that as opposed to paying these big resources to a quarterback again who might just more so be along for the ride. And I really just think, can Jalen Hurts get there? Yes, he can. Again, the Eagles upgraded their talent around him. They have one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. Of course, all these things aren't necessarily sustainable once you pay the quarterback that big contract, because you have less resources to re-sign your own players or acquire the new players and everything. So that's a concern. And I think we're seeing a little of that with the Cowboys right now and the offseason they had after paying Dak. So that's always something to think about. And then I also think about, Jalen Hurts has clearly not demonstrated a mastery of throwing the football just yet. And we'll see if he can. But there have been issues there. He had a very slow time to throw as a rookie. And then again last year. I'd like to see him, process better. I'd like to see him use the middle of the field. And these are issues that he's had dating back to college, where he played. I know he's young. He's only 23, 24, but he played extensively in college. Like, there's a lot of game film on him, and those issues were still kind of persistent there, to the point where he got benched for a quarterback that really no one likes in the NFL, except for maybe some Dolphins.
Jody loves him. Jody loves him.
When Tua busts out this year, you're just another guy I'm going to have to call on the carpet now.
Well, I'm with you, BLG.
He's busting out.
Yeah. I think Jalen Hurts, to be clear, I think I'd feel a little bit better about him than I do about Tua. I mean, maybe Jody, you disagree, but still, I mean, he got benched for that guy.
You just finished saying he replaced him. Now you know more football than Nick Saban. Nick Saban had the choice and said, Tua, get in there, and he threw a national championship touchdown pass to Devonta Smith. Come on.
Well, then you must not like Jalen Hurts a lot then.
No, I like him both. I like Tua better.
Player development, I always say, is real. Jalen Hurts has developed. So give Nick Sirianni, Shane Steichen, Brian Johnson, Kevin Patullo some credit. I would take Jalen Hurts right now over Tua, but I would,
ridiculous.
I would not take either over a lot of quarterbacks. Forget about the Justin Herberts of the world, who I have a man crush on, and the Joe Burrows of the world. There are a lot of quarterbacks I'd take before both. But if it were Jalen Hurts versus Tua, and by the way, I think Nick Saban, I'm going to put Nick in this category as well. Today, I think he'd take Jalen Hurts. But that's because player development is real. I think one guy has developed more than the other guy. But we'll see.
The other guy just got a very good offensive coach to come in and take over his team. So let's see if player development.
He also got a very good receiver. He got a better receiver than Jalen Hurts did. So we're going to know. We're going to know about both of those players. After this season, because both of those teams have done a lot to build up around those particular quarterbacks. And I think this is it. There's no more excuses for either of them, to be honest.
I agree. So let me go here, BLG. And this is going to have me come off looking like a bad guy, which I am. So it's not really that much of a stretch. The Eagles have one advantage in this whole Jalen Hurts contract thing going for them. And that's that Jalen Hurts is a hardworking, dedicated, team-first kind of guy. They don't have to extend him. I know John made the case for the guys they extended in a certain year, in a contract, non-first round draft pick. We identify, we extend. But you don't have to. And for me, Jalen Hurts hasn't had the advancement, hasn't put up the numbers to be able to say, yes, let's extend him. Make him sing for his supper again after his fourth year. Worst case scenario, you still have the franchise tag that you can throw on him. One of the reasons why you try and avoid doing that is, you tick off the player, and he's not happy about it because others in the same contractual situation have gotten contract extension, specifically from the Philadelphia Eagles. But Jalen Hurts, I feel, is not one of those guys you have to worry about. Behind closed doors, he might be willing to say this is not right and I'm not happy, but he's not going to show it on the field. He's going to come in. He's going to go 100% of practice. He's going to be the leader that he is. Will the Eagles take advantage of Jalen Hurts because of the kind of player that he is when it comes to team first?
Well, I would say, as far as I know, and maybe I'm missing this, Jalen Hurts doesn't represent himself. He still has an agent, and that's a lot of the times, I feel like where that decision is coming from. No matter what the player is like, they have an agent for a reason, and the agent is and depending, how much they trust that agent, and assuming he's not going to fire them or just totally disregard them, the agent is going to tell Jalen Hurts to do another thing. And I just think that, again, like, I think the Eagles lose leverage, kind of, if they don't get a deal done early on, because, okay, then let's say, he has a good year the year after that, assuming they even still keep him around. And then all of a sudden, yeah, you can tag him, but that's such a big cap hit, that you're taking now, like all that cap space you're dedicating just to a tag. And then, I'm not saying he would do this, but then it opens the path to, like, what Kirk Cousins did, where he's just like, I'm just going to keep betting on me. And then that's not a good situation to be in, because at the end of the day, you're going to have to pay a contract that is much more exorbitant than you would have to pay. And some of that maybe is a good problem to have, because if it's worth paying, then Jalen Hurts has clearly progressed to a good point. But I just think you kind of need to have the foresight on these things, and the Eagles do it right. They do some things wrong for sure, but one of the things they do right is get out and ahead with these negotiations, and that gives them a lot of flexibility to kind of to do that. And I just think waiting is really not the answer here.
Yeah, and Jalen, Nicole Lynn is his agent, the one agency, and you're right. See, here's the problem, Jody. As a second round pick, typically, you say, well, that's good from the Eagles' perspective. And normally it is, obviously, but he's not making, at least Lamar Jackson, as a first round pick, even though he's number 32 overall, has that 5th-year option. And you get that big spike in the 5th year where you're paid significant money, even though it's not going to be outrageous money like you would make on the extension. As a second round pick, he's not making any money. So there's no way that Nicole Lynn is going to say,
he's making more money than Dak was making. Dak was a 4th-round pick. And the Cowboys played it the exact same way, and Dak had the exact same attitude. He didn't threaten to hold out. He didn't threaten to want to walk away.
But he ultimately got the deal as well. I got to see when Dak signed, but he
wasn't
got
after
the deal.
His 3rd year, was into his 4th year. They had to put the franchise tag on him.
But the Cowboys squandered, like, their opportunity to have a quarterback on a cheap deal, and now again, like, they had to look at their offseason that they had. They had to get rid of Amari Cooper.
Yeah, well, that's just part of when you do sign the extension. I mean, you can only kick the can down the road as long as possible as you can. Ultimately, you have to re-sign the player. But yeah, I don't remember the circumstances, and you could be right, Jody. But my point is, the agent's going to be pushing. The agent's going to be pushing because there's no way they're going to say Jalen Hurts is going to go into his 4th year making $1.3 million and say, oh, we're fine with that. Now, hey, maybe the Eagles play hardball. They don't have to do anything, but I do think there are unintended consequences to that road as well. And even though he is everything you say he is, Jody, as far as work ethic, leadership, boy, at some point you got to do something for yourself as well. And I find it very hard to believe that either happens, that the Eagles would want to go into that 4th year if he plays well, or vice versa. Jalen Hurts would want to go into that 4th year if he's just what he was last season. It's a very difficult sort of tightrope, and that's what I've been talking about for months. I just don't think you can say, bang, let him play out his contract. I think that doesn't exist anymore. And if it does, it means there's other.
John.
No, you didn't let me finish, Jody.
It just happened with Dak Prescott.
Jody, you didn't listen to the end of the sentence. I said if it does happen, there are other issues. That's how I finished it. There are significant other issues that create those unintended consequences. Yes, you have the right to do it as a team, but that's not, you're pointing to the Dallas Cowboys who do business differently.
Yeah.
And I think we talk about it all the time on the show. The Eagles are smart in the way they do business. I give them credit. If you do that, there are other issues, and that's the part you didn't hear.
Well, what I heard, John, what you said, it doesn't happen anymore.
I said,
It happened 2 years ago.
Brandon, you're here. What did I say? I said, if there are other issues, there are other issues if it happens. That's what I said.
I don't disagree with that, John. What I reacted to was you said it doesn't happen anymore.
Well, it doesn't happen here for sure.
2 years. Now that's a different story. Yeah, the Eagles have handled their business their way. The Cowboys have handled their business their way. I'm just suggesting that if Jalen Hurts comes out this year and completely replicates the season that he had last year, no better, no worse. Doesn't go backwards where you go, oh my God, why the hell is this kid our quarterback? But he doesn't improve where you go, yeah, we kind of need to lock him up. He has the same exact season with improved weapons. With the addition of A.J. Brown, then what did the Eagles do? If you're the Eagles, John, I'll put you in Howie Roseman's shoes, and I know it's a hypothetical question, so it's very narrow focus, and it's probably not even fair. If Jalen Hurts has the same exact season this year that he had last year, what would you suggest the Eagles do?
I would suggest they draft a quarterback. They use their 2 first-round picks to draft a quarterback. I think the only way Jalen Hurts plays on his final year of his rookie deal in Philadelphia is as a lame duck. And I don't think the Eagles want him to be a lame duck either way. So to me, it's hard to envision this particular organization taking that path. And that's why I've been saying for months, and you know this, Jody, the Eagles will have to make a decision on Jalen Hurts after this year. They will have to make a decision by their own organizational credo. They will have to make a decision because they don't want a lame duck quarterback. Other teams might want it, but they don't want it. And now I'm talking about the Eagles. They do not want a lame duck quarterback. Could be wrong, wouldn't be the first time, but I find it very hard to believe after watching Howie Roseman all these years that that's the way he's going to do business. I think they're going to make a decision. Brandon, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, you'll have 36 starts, 47 total games played of Jalen Hurts, like to kind of, judge a sample size on in addition to college. So I just think they don't want a lame duck. It's like, is this your guy or not? And now part of the, thing here is to consider is, what are the alternatives? Because we don't know that for sure. And yes, the Eagles have 2 first-round picks, but 4 other teams who are also quarterback needy have first-round picks in the 2023 NFL draft. So there's no guarantee, they can just trade up to 1 overall or even whatever high enough to necessarily get one of the guys. At the same time, you don't always need to do that. Justin Herbert fell. Some quarterbacks fall and end up being good. We don't always have to just take the guy at number 1, but still, we don't know what that looks like. We don't know what the free agency / trade market looks like. Maybe Lamar Jackson is available, but even if he is, let's say, like, do the Eagles want him? Do the Eagles want another quarterback who's kind of, been in this like run heavy offense and isn't necessarily a volume passer? Same kind of question you could ask about like Kyler Murray. So that's the big question. Like, what are the alternatives and how viable are they? Because then if they're not, like, are you going to get stuck in a similar position this year where you're basically kind of ending up with Jalen Hurts? And if that doesn't feel great, and that doesn't seem to do a reason to do a contract extension with someone is just because you're stuck with them and you can't do any better. But it also just might be their best option, which I don't think they will settle for that again by any means. But it is a path that exists.
Is it a quarterback thing or is it an Eagles thing? Because this past year, they basically let Derek Barnett be a lame duck. He was off his first contract. They let him play it out. They ended up bringing him back. Not my favorite signing of the offseason. Mm-hmm. So is it a quarterback thing that you say the Eagles won't go down the lame duck road because they just had a lame duck situation this past year? It's a QB thing that is the reason why you don't think they'll let him play on the final year of his contract?
It's just an organizational thing. I think, Barnett was more of the exception than the rule. And obviously there's the 5th-year option in there too, because they had the ability to kind of get that, okay, let's get that 1 more year and see with him. And they ended up bringing him back again, which I also don't agree with. But yeah, I don't think that's the rule as much as it was the exception.
No, I think it's just quarterbacks and coaches when you talk about lame ducks. I mean, you have 1 year prove it players every year. It's about the position and coaching. You never want a lame duck at quarterback or coach. And typically if you have one, it's a bad signal to the locker room, the organization, everybody as a whole. But, you know, think about James Bradbury. All right, he's here for 1 year. Go
Right.
prove it. You'll see. Kaiser White, he's here for 1 year. Go prove it. See if he can do something. So I guess I'll end it there, Brandon. The expectations of this team are, gaining steam. Certainly, I don't know about as much nationally, but certainly locally. Do you think that changes anything as far as the status moving forward? I've talked about the coaching staff a lot, and it's very rare in the modern NFL that you have a complete coaching staff return. And the Eagles never had that. I mean, you think about, success. They lose it because Frank Reich, because they win the Super Bowl, John DeFilippo. Then after that year, it became the expectations thing, right? Mike Rowe had to be scapegoated. Carson Walsh, and Doug's last year, the reason he's not here is because he wanted Press Taylor and Matt Burke and so forth and so on. This is probably it for this coaching staff together as a whole, because if the Eagles are successful, then Gannon's probably leaving, Steichen might leave. If they're not successful,
Right.
Jeffrey Lurie's going to look for the scapegoat. Do you see it any other way?
I think especially with Gannon, that makes sense. Like, he shouldn't be here next year because, again, either like the defense is good, he gets hired, he already had interest last offseason, or he's not, and the defense, to my opinion, like they did last year, kind of didn't fully perform up to their level of the talent. Not to say they had amazing talent, but still, I think they underachieved with what they had. And anytime you allow 80% completion passers in a season after that had only been done 6 times, I believe, in the 70s Eagle seasons prior, it's not very good. So, I think Gannon and Hurts really are kind of the biggest question marks with this team as a whole. And there's a lot to prove. And in similar fashion, in terms of like being able to have success against the biggest challenges for both of them, still need to answer that. Coaching staff as a whole, I think we saw some encouraging things from Nick Sirianni. At the same time, like how good is he? Like, can he be one of the league's best coaches? Maybe he doesn't have to be for this team to be successful, but I'd like to see him give this team more of an edge. And it's one thing for him to pivot like he did from passing the ball as much to running the ball, but we just talked about at the top of the show, like, that can't be the only answer he has. He has to find a way to develop, a very good passing offense. And we haven't really seen him do that yet as a head coach. Doesn't mean he can't do it, but we haven't seen that yet. So I think that's just a common theme with this team as a whole. Like, it's one thing to look at all this stuff on paper and think it's good. And no one can blame Eagles fans who want to get excited about this year and feel like this team can take a step. But you can't just assume that they're going to, first of all, it's all going to manifest in a positive way, because we've seen some bad things in the past where
bad things always happen. It's not all going to go to plan.
And then, again, just beat a good team. Like they didn't do that at all last year. Beat one good team before we can talk about, this one being any kind of a good team.
All right, BLG, I got to know, during the last 6 weeks, have you been working on your punting? Have you been getting out there trying to drive the ball? Hang time. What's your hang time? If they called on you to compete with Aaron Sipas in camp this year, are you ready?
No, that'd be ugly. I'd probably be worse than him.
Come on, you got to have a big leg. You're big to begin with. You got to have a big leg. I got to believe that.
So I went to the doctor a month or two ago, and he said I have tight hamstrings. So I don't know. I don't think I can do it. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay.
I didn't know they could diagnose tight hamstrings.
The Eagles would fail you for the physical because they're all about the non-contact injuries. They protect their players. And if you're just going to bring the team down by getting hurt by just punting, it'll make them look bad. So I'm sorry for even bringing it up. You got no shot. Go back to covering the team. Forget about the dream
of becoming the punter. Make sure you stretch before you get out of that seat, Brandon.
Yeah.
BLG, always a pleasure, buddy. Thanks for coming on. We'll certainly talk to you again before, probably before camp gets underway.
Thanks, bud.
Guys.